If you ever find an old cassette tape in a dead person's house, do not press play. Not even once. Be some voices wait for you to listen, and then they learn your name. My name is Sarah. I am 26, and 3 months ago, I found my mother's voice trapped inside a plastic box the size of my palm. Bye for now. Please, just listen to the whole thing before you decide I'm crazy. By the end, I thank you. My mother died in March. Cancer. Slow, then fast, the way the doctors always warn you it will be. Her last words to me were soft, almost a whisper. She said, "Sarah, don't listen to anything that's so." She said strange things all week about shadows in the corner, about a man standing by the window W. I didn't understand what she meant. I still don't, not fully. But I understand enough now to be Afra. After the funeral, it fell on me to clean out her house. I'm an only child. My father left when everything smelled like her perfume, like old paper, like dust settling on furniture that hadn't been closed to donate. Furniture to sell. Photographs to keep. It was slow, heavy work, the kind that makes your chest hurt, even when your hands are just folding S. On the 5th day, I went up into the attic. I hadn't been up there since I was a kid. Maybe 10-year boxes were stacked everywhere, some so old the cardboard had gone soft and brown at the corners. The photo albums with Plasty, a box of my father's old vinyl records, which surprised me. I thought she'd thrown out everything. It was old, dark wood, with a little brass clasp gone green with age. It wasn't locked. Inside, sit just a plain black cassette, the kind you'd find in a bargain bin at a thrift store. But it wasn't the velvet underneath. It hadn't even flattened the way old velvet does. It looked like the tape had something told me my mother had touched this last, that her fingers had been the last fingers on it. I didn't have a cassette player. Nobody does anymore. So I drove to 3 different thrift stores. The man at the counter tested it for me. And it worked, the wheels turning with a soft mechanical, it was just a tape. Probably an old mixtape, or maybe my mother reading me a bedtime story from when she used to record herself reading books for me when I was a baby. So I could hear her voice even WH. At first, there was only static, the hiss of old tape running through old machinery, that gray sound exactly as I remembered it, down to the small catch she always had in her throat when she was about "I wanted more time." I always wanted more time with you. I started crying immediately. It felt like the voice continued, talking about small things, how proud she was of me, how she remembered the The tape ran for about 10 minutes before it clicked off on its own, the reel stopping with a soft. I listened to it 3 more times that night. Each time, it felt like a hug from beyond the grave. I fell asleep on the floor of my living room with the boombox still sitting beside me, the small aura. The next evening, I wanted to hear her voice again. I made tea, sat on the floor in the same spot, and then her voice. But something was wrong. "Sarah," the voice said. "My sweet girl, did you sleep well last night? You always used to toss and turn when you were anxious about something. I could always tell, even WH. I froze, my tea cooling in my hands. I had tossed and turned the night before. Actually, no, wait, I told myself I was misremembering. Grief does strange things to memory. Maybe I had just forgotten. I know you drove to 3 stores looking for something to play me on. You always were stubborn, like I hadn't even told my best friend that specific detail. I had only said I'd found an old play or so. In the morning, sunlight helps. It always does. That my mother had. That afternoon, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I went to the library and looked through. It was from almost 40 years ago, barely 2 paragraphs long, buried on page 9 of a local paper. I stared at that clipping for a long time. I told myself it meant nothing. Coincidences happen. Oh, but I wrote down the name anyway, Eleanor Voss, on a scrap of paper I folded into my pocket, an ID. And before that, though, curiosity got the better of me one more time. I found the old address listed, his name was Walter, and he told me he'd lived on that street his whole life, 71 years, and not after her husband passed. Just her and the girl. I asked about the girl. Margaret. Walter's FAC. The girl was gone before the funeral. Family came and took her, people said. Relatives from out of. That night's recording started the same way. Static, then her voice. Sarah, it said, you called Dee. She doesn't remember me telling her anything, does she? That's all right. I never told anyone about some things are just between a mother and her daughter. My whole body went rigid. There was no way. You're scared now? The voice continued, and something about its tone had changed. It was still I had. God help me, I had. I had prayed exactly that, more than once in the darkest weeks after the eye had been ashamed of it. Somehow, like wanting more time was a selfish, greedy thing to want from G. I know you feel guilty about that. You don't have to feel guilty. I forgive you. I forgive you for it. Doesn't that feel good to hear? Doesn't that feel like exactly what you needed? That was too much. I sat there panting in the dark, my heart slamming against my ribs. The things it said, they were all of them. Things I had never told a living soul, things I was ashamed of, things I had buried. So this wasn't a recording of my mother's love. This was something else, wearing her voice like a mask. I threw the tape and the boombox into a garbage bag that night, tied it shut in 3 separate knots. 3 days later, I opened my apartment door to leave for work, and the garbage bag was sitting on same bag. Same 3 knots. Inside, the boombox and the tape completely undamaged, like nothing had. I should have driven 2 hours out of town and left it in a dumpster behind a stranger's business. That's like this had already happened before, to someone else, and the ending was already written. I would wake up and find the bathroom mirror slightly fogged, like someone had just taken a hot show. Mine is dark brown. No gray at all. Not a 26. Another night. I woke at exactly 3:17 into just the smell, fading slowly, like she had walked through the room seconds before I opened my eyes. I started avoiding my own apartment, staying late at work, go to my friend Priya's place instead. I told Priya everything one night over wine at her kitchen table, half expecting her to tell me. Priya shrugged, uncomfortable, wrapping both hands around her wine glass like it could warm something in my habits, my secrets, my fears. And each time, the voice sounded a little more confident. A little the next morning, I asked Priya if her grandmother was still alive, if maybe she could tell me more. I bought a hammer. That sounds almost funny now, writing it down. Going to hardware stores, specify. I smashed the plastic casing until it cracked into a dozen pieces, until the thin brown tape spilled. Then I gathered every piece into a metal bucket, carried it out to my apartment's small concrete coup. I felt for the first time in weeks like I could breathe. I went home and took the longest shower. I lay frozen in bed, listening. The static was faint but unmistakable, coming from the direction of it was coming from the radio on my microwave. The little digital clock radio that came built into TH, don't you miss me? Don't you want your mother back? I'm so close now, Sarah. I'm so close to being, yeah, I know, it said. But I'm getting closer. Every time you listen, I get a little closer to being he. I didn't tell Priya about the microwave right away. I think some part of me was ashamed, The way I never told anyone that detail. Priya went quiet on the other end of the line for a long moment. Around this time, my boss noticed I wasn't sleeping, noticed the dark circles under my eyes, and the Dr. Reyes nodded slowly and told me, gently, that this was actually very common in grief. The men. It was a good explanation. A comforting one. I went back to the library one more time, driven by something I couldn't fully name. Samid Da'an, I think it is old, patient, and it has done this before in other houses, wearing other mothers. Off just a blank gray box where a name or number should be, glowing in the dark like something patient. I keep the phone in a drawer now, face down, the little red notification bubble sitting there in the